So, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you guys through some final study tips that I have. As I said, I graduated in 2021. So I'm just going to go through some tips that I have specifically for physics and potentially for kind of managing all of your other subjects at the same time. So, firstly, make sure that you work up to doing practice questions and homework in exam conditions, so you're not always flipping back to your notes. Maybe you're even timing yourself. If you find that you get a little bit nervous or stressed when you're being timed, it might be a good idea to practice doing that. Um, Make sure you're using your formula sheet. A really good idea is to print out your QCEE formula sheet um, if you can, and practice using that so you know where all the formulas are, you're familiar with all of them, you know where all of the constant values are, such as Planck's constant, Wien's constant, and so forth. You're all familiar with that, you know where everything is, you understand how to do all of the conversions, so make sure you're practicing with your formula sheet, and make sure you're practicing with your graphics calculator so you're not getting confused on the day. And you're not doing it kind of on your laptop or on a different calculator or on Desmos or something like that, right? And really do make sure that you are doing practice questions for all of the topics, right? The best way to kind of practice or, learn the content is to kind of practice it, right? Next, spaced retrieval will save you. So make sure when you're learning your definitions and your concepts that certain periods after your lesson, whether it's at school or at ShootSmart, or a video that you watched or anything like that, make sure that you are using flashcards or kind of asking yourself questions about the content and remembering it from your own mind. And you need to do that in intervals. So you need to do it, I'm not sure the science is, but maybe like 3 or so times after you learn the content. And this really helps to for your brain to remember it. Otherwise, it is very easy to forget. All right, mark all your work. It's impossible to know if you're making mistakes if you're not marking it. And then really clearly make a list of mistakes that you commonly make. So this is something that I had on my notes for my external. If there was a mistake that I commonly made or something that I just wanted to be wary of not making, an example of this relevant to today's content is E equals mc squared. I would always forget to square the c for some reason. So I made a note to myself to always remember to square the c. So when I was in my exam and when I was practicing, whenever I was using E equals mc squared, I would always make sure that I had squared it and really double check with that in my mind to make sure that I wasn't making that mistake. Get some variety in your notes. You can use things from multiple sources, but try to keep it focused. Don't have all of this like miscellaneous stuff. So you can use your textbook, online sources, YouTube videos, this lecture, anything that you'd like. But try to make sure you have a decent understanding of the content too. Something that really is useful when you're kind of making your notes, like your class notes and also like your external notes, is to make sure that you are writing things in your own words, right? I think the only reason that I was able to understand a lot of these concepts so well was that I would write all of my notes in my own words. If I copied something from class, I'd go back to it later on when I was studying, even if it was a few months later, and make sure that I understood it and wrote it all in my own words. And the other thing is I focused on making my studying efficient, right? So I guess instead of kind of studying really, really hard and and like getting into the exam and being stressed about it and like just worrying that I wasn't including enough detail or anything like that. I kept it very focused. So in my notes, I would only have exactly what the syllabus asked for, and I practiced a lot of exams, past exams, previous externals, practice exams, so forth, to make sure that I really had everything down. I'd practiced a lot, and I wasn't kind of learning things unnecessarily and kind of clogging my brain up, because of course you have like 5 or 6 externals, so you really want to make sure that you're not doing more than you need to be doing. Again, take mocks seriously. Don't go crazy with it. It's a marathon, not a sprint, but do take them seriously. They're a good indicator of how you're going, and a really good test in an authentic setting, to really tell you like how much work you need to do. So, again, make a glossary. You have a lot of definitions to know for physics. Use the QCEE definitions, not your textbook definitions. I've said this before. So again, control F the syllabus document to find those definitions and memorize those. It's really easy marks to kind of memorize those definitions. If you kind of get them over and done with, in your exam, you can just do them without a second thought at all in like 2 seconds, and you can spend your time on other things. It's not even necessarily about, I guess, understanding the content for those definitions. It's just about knowing that exact wording, right? Next, steal some friends and make a study group, and really practice on doing it all together. It's really helpful when you can, for yourself and for others, obviously, if you can help other people do questions. A lot of the time, if you're explaining a concept or something, or explaining how to do something to somebody else, it really helps your own understanding. And a lot of the time, somebody else will ask you questions that will point out gaps in your own knowledge, where you can go to your teacher or back to your textbook or something like that to kind of fill that in. And then, of course, make sure you know how to use your calculator, please. Especially with your graphics calculator. On your external, you're going to get a lot of questions. A lot of questions where you need to kind of graph things, or you're looking at gradients or stuff like that. So really, especially if you're in general and you're not used to using a graphics calculator, go through the past external exams, and practice using your graphics calculator the most efficiently for those questions. Because yeah, you'll get a lot of questions with graphs, where you need to figure out graphs, where you need to find intercepts, where you need to find gradients, all that kind of stuff. Do some regular study, even on the holidays, but make sure you rest. Again, don't overdo it. What I'd recommend is kind of doing maybe like 20 minutes a day. Really is like enough. You could even do less and still really benefit from it. And yeah, don't stress yourself out too much. The best thing that I ever figured out, and I didn't do this intentionally, but it really was helpful for me in year 12 and in any of my further academic pursuits at uni, is to, once you've nailed the basics, practice the hard questions. Like, do not just sit around and kind of slog through easy questions. That's really boring. That's just really, really boring. And you learn the most when you're doing harder questions. So push yourself. If you push yourself and you do harder questions, you're learning more, and you also don't need to spend as much time studying because you're studying more efficiently. And because you've been putting more effort in, to doing those hard questions than you would have otherwise if you were doing easy questions, you'll be expending more effort. So you'll you'll deserve the rest more. So make sure that you're practicing complex questions regularly. um, that really is my best tip, honestly. That's especially what I would do in maths. Um, Probably because I was more prepared for maths than for physics. But I would just kind of sit down if I had a spare moment, and I wasn't like, just like relaxing and enjoying myself. Um, I would just kind of, you know, scour through my textbook and find like a hard question and just see if I could do it. I might sit there for like half an hour, just kind of like thinking of a million different ways that I could do it until I could figure it out. Maybe you don't have that level of nerdiness, but if you even have a little bit of that, I'd really recommend. All right, my next not tip. My next tip is to be friends with your teacher or a different teacher if yours is an A1. I know it's really difficult if your teacher kind of is not as interested in teaching you, if they kind of have other things to be doing. It's really difficult to kind of understand the concepts and really to feel motivated to study at all. So if your teacher doesn't really gel with you, try to find a different teacher to be friends with to really help, even if it's just somebody that that knows a lot about physics, maybe like your grandparent or a family friend or something like that. Um, Seek help and clarification. Ask other people in your class. Ask your teacher. Um, Keep a note if it distracts you during your study or if you forget. And then break down the formula sheet without using your notes or looking anything up. That's especially helpful for the electromagnetism topic because you have so many formulas. It's really easy to forget like which formula is for which thing. What's for a solenoid? What's for a straight wire? What's just for a particle? That kind of thing. So break it down without using any notes or anything because obviously when you get your formula sheet in your exam, it's going to be brand new, nothing written on it, right?